Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jamie and I am restoring this Triumph TR6 for a friend of mine. So in the last video I was supposed to get these doors to fit and get the shut lines right, but I ended up repairing this door. Today we're going to fit these doors and get the gaps right. So how am I going to adjust these panel gaps? I just have the left-hand door here, as you can see, held on with magnets. And as you can see on the top here, it's slightly too large and it's slightly too small at the bottom there. It's actually touching. And at the front here, the panel gap is actually pretty good. It's a little bit wide in some areas, but it's not too bad. Now, these cars have a separate chassis to the body, which means you can basically lift off this body from the chassis. Now, the chassis is like the backbone, the strength of the car that holds all your suspension, engine, gearbox, diff, etc. And then the body is obviously the bit that looks nice. What happens is you can shim between the body and the chassis. Because this car doesn't have a roof, this is a aftermarket hard top. These are normally a cabriolet, so this is actually removable. And what happens is there's quite a lot of flex in the body and the chassis, and also over time the rubber in the shims, or that sandwich the shims, they get old, they shrink, they crack, they go missing, etc. And it can affect the panel gaps on the doors. So I did have some shims on the front and some on the back because of this, because of the gap was too big here. So I tried to bend the rear and the front up a little bit so it would sag in the middle, and it did actually close this up. But I think as a starting point, I'm going to remove all the shims, I'm going to throw a few bolts in, and then that's like the plain level field of where to start. So I'm just going to throw a few bolts in now, and then we're going to see where this gap lies then. Now, if I go to the front of the car, I'll show you where the shims are normally placed. So there are fixing points, various fixing points along the chassis of the car. So we have two at the front here, there are two here as well, and then if we have a look inside, we have a point here, 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 and then there is some at the back as well, which are underneath there. Okay, so I've thrown some bolts in, as you can see. One there, a couple at the front, same the other side, two at the front and two at the back. And if we look at the gap, it's actually grown a little bit here. Before I started, I had some shims on the front and some shims on the back, nothing in the middle. And this was a lot closer to being where it should be, but it was still a little too big. And as you can see, it progressively gets smaller towards this corner. And again, at this side of the door, it's not too bad. We want it about 4 or 5 millimeter consistently throughout the door gap. So now I need to decide whether to make it right in this position with no shims, or put the shims back, get it more where it should be before I start adjusting it. I would kind of like to have it with no shims, so then when the body does go back on the chassis after paint, there's going to be like minimal adjustment. Whereas if I jack the back right up to adjust this, it's kind of it feels kind of wrong to me to have to rely on a lot of shims to get this body straight. Okay, so I just added this much of shim on the rear here, and it has closed the top of this gap up by 3 millimeters, which is a lot. But I still can't decide that if there's no shims, that means the body's at like maximum sag and the shot lines would be good. I just feel that that would be the correct way to do it. But this gap is 10 millimeters when there's no shim, so it's quite a lot to fill. I have to fill at least 5 millimeters of that in, which is not a problem. But I'm just deciding the best way to do it. I think I might weld it, or start to weld it and then see how it goes. And the other side is exactly the same. I just added another 5 or 6 millimeter shim, just playing around here, and it's closed it up even more, and it actually is looking pretty damn good. And it would save me a lot of work if I just shimmed it up, but look, that's perfect, 5 millimeters. But it just doesn't feel like it's the right way to go. I'll show you how many shims are under there. It's like really jacked up. We did buy a shim kit, and it comes with everything that you should need, with all the new bolts, etc. And these rubber. So you see these degrade and they will collapse, and that's why you get the door gaps changed. And there's quite a lot of them actually, you know. But I remember I had to make, I made a couple of these because some are missing. So these get sandwiched between the rubbers. So if I shim the middle of the body with these, like so, we already have quite a chunk. So if I shim the back of this up, I would have to shim the back of this up even more than it is now to compensate for that. You see what I'm saying? And it looks like we need another 2 of these. Yeah, I made this last time I was here as well, I remember. Anyway, I'll do a bit of thinking because I want to get this right. Right. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these shims in place. These ones go on the floor pans. So I'm going to put these in place, and then I'm going to put the correct bushings in the front and at the back. As you can see, I have this many shims in the back here, like 3 each side. That's the equivalent of, I'm guessing, 25 millimeters, something like that. Okay, if we go to the underneath of the car, this is where the rear floor pan ones go, and then the front floor pan bushes go, or shims. So I need to lift the body a little bit and then try and slide them in there because I can't get them in from the side. But it shouldn't be too hard. Okay, so I just wedged a piece of wood under there and then lowered the lift and then stuck this bar in there. So when I stick my fingers in there to put the shims in, if this collapses, I'm not going to lose my fingers. Safety first, people. And you can see here that the shims need to go in here, so I need to slide them in this way and then lower the body back down. Easy. Okay, so I've got these shims in place here and here, and I was just about to put the rear shim in here, which I assume is sandwiched like this between 2 rubbers. And yeah, I was just going to lower the body down, and then I noticed, if you see there, it's a bit deformed. So if we come around the rear of the car here, you can see how weak this chassis actually is. It looks like it's only 1 or 1.2 mil thick steel. And in the past, this has deformed with just the vibration of daily driving, etc. And this will affect the door gaps, especially at the top rear gap where we have the problem now. So I haven't seen any mods online about this, but I am going to add a plate to strengthen that. I think I'm going to use a piece of 3mm, which will also add a bit of upward lift and a lot of strength. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces now, and I'm just going to tack them in place, and then I'll add these shims, and then hopefully that will help towards getting the door gap a bit better. Let's do it. So this is the deal. I just made these, 2 of these, 1 for each side, and this will sit on there like that on the top, and I'll just weld across the edges here, and that will offer a bit of strength to that section where it bolts in. Easy. There we go, tacked into place. I'm not going to bother straightening that out because that will flatten once it's bolted up, and I will weld it up properly once the body's off the chassis, seam it up. So that's added a bit of height, as you can see, and a lot more strength. Perfect. With the shims in their places, I've just put the door back on, and now I've just cleaned up the edges on the door, so I can see clearly either edge. Now I've taken all this black paint off, you can see the gap better. So I've lined this up here about the gap that I want, and at the bottom, and it's a little bit bigger in the middle there, but that's a good basis. Also, I've lined these up here and here, and you can see this is a little bit too big still, and as I did on the other side in the previous video, this just snags a little at the bottom there, so I've put tape down. I'm going to cut that off. Line at the bottom is very nice and consistent, so happy with that as well. I've had a few comments about that when I took the body off the chassis, then I should have made a note of the original shims that were in place. And that's a fair point if I was taking the body off, doing something with the engine gearbox and then putting everything back as it was. But in this instance, because we're doing a full restoration, there's a lot of the body panels that have been changed, so things could have moved a little bit. Plus, the old shims that were there, the rubbers had degraded so much, so it wouldn't really help me in this case. So doing it this way is the best option. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, as you can see here, I've lined this side up quite equally. The gap right at the bottom there is very similar to what we have just about here, but there are gaps that are slightly wider, and I'm going to fill those by MIG welding them and then grinding them down. It's a bit of a tedious task, but quite necessary to get perfect gaps. So all I'm going to do is come along here, put a load of welds along here, and then grind them down. And if we go to the other side, after shimming the body, the lines are actually really not that bad. So I need to add a little bit here. This is the line after I cut it. It's still a little bit too tight, but I can grind some off and then weld it up and grind it back again. But we're looking pretty good, I think. Okay, here's the progress. It ain't pretty, don't judge me. Trust me, once this is all cleaned up, it's gonna look fine. But as you can see now, the gap is closed up. I always try to weld too much on there to close it up too much, because you'll find when you grind it down, because it's not completely straight because of the weld, you have enough material on there to make it straight. Well, that's the plan anyway, so it's not looking too bad. I've got a bit up here as well. This didn't weld too nicely, but it will be fine once it's all cleaned up. And it's a bit too tight down here, so I need to take a little bit more off, but let's grind that down. Okie dokie, just cleaned up this edge with the wire brush, and then I can kind of see where I stand. And it's beefed up a little bit more, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flat this off this way, get rid of this raised edge, and then we'll see what we've left with, and then we can do a little bit of fine tuning. Like I said, it looks a bit of a mess at the moment. It's blown some, not blown some holes, but it's not been clean weld and there's been some bubbling. But usually what happens is this edge kind of burns through, and behind that edge there'll be dirt and sealer and stuff like that. So once I've sanded this off, I can weld it again and then all will be well. With the top edge now ground down, you can see that this is quite rough around the edges, just how I like it. And now I'm going to make this a bit smoother, then we can offer it up to the car and see where we need to either add or take a little bit more off. I know that this side here was still a little bit tight, so I'm going to take a little bit more off of there and then we can have a butcher's. Alright, see you then, bye. Okay, so we're not looking too bad after just the first attempt. It needs a little bit of fine tuning, but I think you would agree. It is a lot better from where we started. You see it's a little bit too thick here. Just bring that out a little bit, and this is still, I didn't actually take any more of this off, so I want to lay another stripe of tape and then take a bit more off there. And the bottom gap is nice and even. So let's add a little bit more, subtract a little bit more, and we're making good progress, I think. Man, this is going to be a really cool car when it's done. Okay, so where I've removed more of the edge here, you can see where the folded over lip has come away. I'm just going to put a couple of tacks in there because it's a bit baggy, and then we'll have another fitment trial. Okay, so that's looking much better, as you can see. Removed a little bit more there, and need to tackle a couple of bits here, maybe a little bit wide here. Bit more Fettling. I'm actually trying to TIG weld this because I don't want to add more material because the line wasn't too bad. Obviously with the MIG welder it keeps feeding wire into the weld and will build it up. Whereas with the TIG welder you can just kind of fuse the panels together. It's not welded too nicely, but it's not too bad either because obviously it is a bit contaminated with all the dirt that's in between the panels. But I'll keep going, I'll grind this off and see where we are. But okay, so we're getting pretty close now on this door gap, but there's another little tip I'd like to share with you. So let's take a look. So as you can see here, I've pushed the door as far that way as I can, maintaining this correct level here along this line. And what I'm going to do is I have put a 1mm cutting disc on the grinder, and as you can see it's almost even but not quite. So at the bottom here we have about 1mm, and at the top also. So what I'm going to do is just run that cutting wheel down this gap and then it'll be completely even. Okay, there, I just ran the cutting disc up there and now you can see it's nice and even top to bottom. I'll push the door this way and do exactly the same. Okay, so there we have it. I'm pretty happy with the result. I've put it pretty much where it should be. I used this, this is 5mm thick, and I tested it and it just nicely fits in the gap. I've chosen to use 5mm, sometimes I use 4mm, depending on the car, but on this I thought I would use 5. You have to allow obviously for paint and a little bit of body filler, so when the car is painted this will close up a little bit, and because these are known for being a bit flexible, I'd rather there be just a little bit more gap so we don't have any interference and chipping of paint or anything like that. So, and I think it looks pretty fantastic, to be honest. So I just need to do the same to the other side of the door, and then I need to fit the hinges, of course, and see if I need to make some allow for extra adjustment on the hinges, because sometimes if there's not enough adjustment you can't get the door exactly in the right place. So that's the next thing I need to have a look at as well. Okay, so I've just been ripping into this project and haven't really filmed anything because it's not worth filming, but I'll show you what I've done. So as you saw, I got these door gaps pretty much spot on, and I have now added the hinges. Check that out. And there was plenty enough adjustment on the hinges to get the door, like I said, pretty much perfect. The other door was a bit more of a pain. Let's walk around. I also have put the hinges on the boot and the bonnet ready for them to go on. But before I do, there's a few bits I still need to do. But if we come around to this side, this door was a lot more of a pain to get to fit, but I got there in the end. And it's now also on its hinges. So like I said, I didn't film any of this because, you know, it's just pretty straightforward stuff. I had to make a little bit of an adjustment on the holes where the hinges go through to give me a little bit more of adjustment on this door. The door gaps are identical both sides, but this door was just a little bit more of a pain. I had to add a little bit at the bottom, and this is the one that I have repaired also. So I had to add, like I said, a little bit at the bottom and a little bit more on this than I did the other side. But like I said, it's there now and is looking good. Right, if we work our way around to the front, I also was not 100% happy with how this fitted here. So it just stuck out a couple of millimeters and I wanted it to be perfect. So I cut along here, brought this panel in a little bit to meet this wing, and I also adjusted this a little bit, so now it's completely flush and is looking good. Then there was an unexpected repair, or two repairs I have to do. So basically this had some corrosion on it, and I thought we could get away with not having to cut it out and weld it, but on closer inspection there was quite a few little pinholes and everything, so you might as well just replace it because you'll regret it further down. And then the same is for this panel. If I move these out the way, this is my template. So as you can guess, I'm going to replace this panel here, which is a little bit of a pain, but as you can see, when I took this off, this is basically the mount for the windscreen wiper motor. An arm comes off the motor and it goes through this hole here and then comes out here. So there is actually one of the fixing nuts missing. So I took this off and it revealed under here that this is just a little bit too corroded for my liking. So rather than repair this section here, that's quite a lot of welding. Obviously I'm just going to cut this whole thing out. The little bit of a pain is that it slips underneath this inner wing and is connected. It's connected to this new panel that I put here, so I have to drill out those plug welds that I made. But that is just how it goes. Is there anything else I've been doing? I've just been tidying up lots of little pieces. I basically went around the whole car and I took pictures of all the little things that need to be sorted out, because the last thing you want is when this comes back to paint is that you've missed little things. So there's also, like, if I show you inside, just tidied up some of the welds so there's no like sharp edges or anything like that. So I've addressed those kind of things. I tidied up my welding a little bit over there. Still a little bit to do, and just finding bits and pieces. Also, I remembered when we lifted the body off of the chassis when we first started this project, these had come away, so the car was really flexing. So I've just welded up these edges nicer to give it a bit more strength. I also made this line fit better along here because this was just overlapping a little bit at the bottom. So I shaved some off, welded it back up, and now that fits like a treat and it's all bolted in place. So it is all coming together. So yeah, I think that is covered pretty much everything, and I'm just going to go through the stuff and get this nearer to go into the paint shop. Let's crack on. Okay, so a few more bits and pieces done. Come and take a look. I finished welding this piece in. It looks super. Still need to do this, but I did fit the boot lid. Look at these shut lines. These are just perfect. Well happy with that, and it opens and closes perfectly. I also deleted all the holes from the previous registration plate. And yeah, I'm just ticking the boxes of all the bits and pieces that need to be done. Okay, so I'll end the video there. Hope you enjoyed this update, and there might be one more update before I go back to Finland. I have another week here. So hopefully in that time I'll get that repair done under the bonnet. That means then the bonnet can go on. I won't get the roof done in that time, but I'll get all these little bits and pieces done. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. It really helps. And until next time, thanks a lot. Bye.